Hey! I'm Cooper.
And I'm Karen.
You're listening to
You Want Me to Do What?
A conversation between a millennial trainer, that's me, and his boomer client.
That's me.
As we take our gym floor conversations to the recording studio.
Listen in our informative conversations where we'll guide you through 4 phases of habit change, from contemplation to maintenance and beyond.
Through each episode, learn about the intersection of generations and discover how, at the end of the day, we're more similar than we realize.
Grab a front row seat to our sometimes hilarious stories about our personal experiences as we move through each phase.
Join us as we reflect on our unlikely friendship, our cultural differences, and certainly that big age gap.
We hope you see it's never too early or too late to be your best self. So if you're considering making changes to your health or fitness, or you've already started, this podcast is certainly for you. Welcome.
In today's podcast, A Tale of Two Perspectives, you'll find out why we decided it was so important we sit down together and take our gym floor conversations to the recording studio. We wanted to share our experiences, thoughts, and perspectives on what it looks like working to get healthy at 30-something or 60-something and any age in between, along with all of the similarities and differences you'll find on the journey.
Oh my God, Cooper, how many times over the past year and a half during our sessions have we said, we should be recording this? And how many times have I said to you, you want me to do what?
Yeah, there were a lot of those moments, especially in the beginning, which is a huge reason why I wanted to put this together, because I realized there were things that we were going through that I knew I had other clients experiencing as well. I wanted to emphasize the 2 perspectives in our first episode because it will set the tone of our conversations and stories going forward, and hopefully help you, the listener, set your own expectations and adjust your point of view to where you're at on your health journey.
Yeah, the 2 perspectives that we're coming from is me as a boomer and Cooper as a millennial, and just, that path that you're on when you determine that you want to do better and be healthier, and the differences based on, our backgrounds and our ages versus the reality of what it is we're both trying to accomplish here.
Yeah, that's right. I'm sure a lot of people don't think we have a lot in common as our different ages.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I could kind of almost be your son.
You could absolutely be my son. I tell you that all the time.
And I sometimes think that we feel disconnected from the older generation. And I think sometimes also the older generation thinks that they're disconnected from the ones coming up.
Totally.
As well. We may think that, they don't know what it's like to be me, when that's not necessarily true. The older generations are looking back and know what it was like for them at that age. And me, as a younger person, I'm looking ahead at what my future might look like.
Yeah, I mean, listen, we've been where you are. It may have been a different world and a different time, but mentally and physically, I've been a 32-year-old woman who had not a care in the world about my health and fitness at that time.
And it's hitting me also that I am as old as you when I was born.
Yeah, when you were born, I was a 31-year-old woman living in Brooklyn, New York, having a great time.
In 1992.
Yes,
yeah.
In 1992.
Yeah, which to me feels like that's 30 years ago.
Yeah.
But to you, it's like, that was 30 years ago.
30 years ago.
So it's just crazy how different our 2 perspectives view time.
And now in our 2 perspectives, with you helping me as a client, we realize how similar it really actually is.
Regardless of your age.
Regardless of age.
That's right.
Totally.
Yeah.
In each episode of this podcast, we'll be covering the 4 stages of change and compare our personal stories, talk about what we experienced in each of those phases, and let you in on what it might look like when you're in each of these phases. We'll share quotes that really resonate with us, And I'll hit you with some stats on different aspects of boomers versus millennials when it comes to health and fitness.
Actually, some of the stats were actually pretty eye-opening.
Yeah.
I have to say. But before we get into that, I wanted to start our flagship episode with a little introduction to myself to help y'all get to know me a little more and where I'm coming from as an exercise professional. So I'm Cooper, and I've been a trainer for 6 years now, with over a decade of personal experience in creating the best version of myself before I became a trainer as well, starting lifting in college. I am an ACE Senior Fitness Specialist as well, and for those who don't know, ACE stands for the American Council on Exercise.
And I just recently found that out about you, Cooper, and I was saying, you know what? No wonder he handled me so well.
Yeah, well,
He's certified in seniors.
I took that, and little did I know how well that would actually help me out later on.
You needed that.
That's right. Now, in the seemingly short time it's been as a fitness pro, I've had quite a few people cross my path. People who have never picked up a weight before in their life. People who are parents and can't find the time for themselves anymore. People who are students. People who are overworked nurses. You know, there has been a lot of different perspectives that I've come across.
I mean, I can imagine that because honestly, you go to a personal trainer because it bothers you so much that you need to do something, and you just figure if you get somebody to help you, it'll make you do it, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And actually, there was also been people who used to be active, but then the dreaded COVID happened.
Yeah.
And the shutdown, and that kind of just turned, I think, a lot of people off of health and fitness. And
yeah, my God, you had bigger things to worry about, like living. I mean, that was monumental in shaking up everyone's lives for better and, and sometimes for worse, with habits and things thoughts that we were even having back then.
People just seem to think that, I'm just going to pause for however long.
It was just too much going on.
But then there was me, who actually, I think, gained a lot from the shutdown. It actually turned out to be quite an opportunity for myself because even though I wasn't working, I had no access to a gym, but I also had access to the outside and outdoors, and I still wanted to continue to be active. Otherwise, I would lose my mind.
And how would you get back to work if you had fallen out of shape when this thing was over?
That's right. Yeah.
I didn't even think about that.
And so I wouldn't let anyone sort of stop me from trying to find ways of staying active.
Nice.
And I pulled the classic millennial move and trained out of my parents' garage because I'm in an apartment. And they were gracious enough to let me do that. I just couldn't go inside. And I trained a lot. I luckily had, weights left over from a previous job that they were getting rid of them. So I, grabbed some free weights.
Nice.
I got a barbell. And the biggest thing that really turned me around and elevated my goals to a new level was hiring a nutritionist, a coach, to help me. And while I was gaining weight over the shutdown, like most people, mine was pretty much mostly muscle.
Well, that was good for you. Honestly, I mean that sincerely.
Earlier on in my training career, when I was in college, I had been given the advice to actually start tracking my macros. And being more attuned to my food and diet.
The first time you ever said that to me, it was like, what language did he just speak? And I have no recollection. Okay, whatever. I'll get to that later.
Yeah, and I wish I had done it sooner because things might have gone a lot better for me earlier if I had done that.
But you were a client. And that's what we clients do.
That's right.
We pay for it. We want the help. But then do we always follow it? Nope.
That's right. And unfortunately, it took me several years to realize that I needed extra help, which is why I hired my coach.
So interesting.
And now that when I started tracking, I didn't go back.
Wow.
I do it to this day still.
What did you do? You actually did what the coach told you?
That's right. And you got results. Who knew?
Who knew doing what the coach tells you actually works?
That's right. So if you're a coach, if you're a trainer and your coach is telling you to track your food, do it. Because I wanted to build more lean muscle. I am a self-assigned hard gainer. which means it's hard for me to add weight
I can't
and
even
gain
believe
weight.
you said that.
That's
a thing. Wait, that's a thing.
It's a thing.
That's
Yeah.
a real thing.
I can
hard
hear
gainer?
so many voices through the microphone right now saying,
Oh my God, who could even say that with a straight face?
Yeah, so it's hard for me to eat a lot, which, you know, it kind of tracks, because I come from a family of athletes, especially distance athletes. My dad is a multi-marathoner, even into his 60s.
Wow.
My brother ran cross country, cycled for his university, and semi-professionally. And then I myself also swam competitively all through middle, high school, college. So I had a naturally, you know, active lifestyle and upbringing.
You could kind of set those markers.
Yeah. My parents threw me into so many sports growing up to see which one would stick. It would be basketball, baseball, tennis, soccer, football. Golf found its way in there somehow.
Wow.
But swimming was the one I eventually settled on as, you know, this is pretty fun. I like doing it.
Okay. Until
Until I discovered the weight room. And most people get overwhelmed by the oversaturation of information out there to getting fit. And they may get intimidated when they walk into a gym, which, you know, is fair if you've never had that kind of background
Of
than
course
me.
it's intimidating.
Yeah.
Yes.
And they also may get intimidated when they see someone like me who, you know, is so seemingly far ahead of where they are currently that it's hard for them to maybe sometimes listen to what I have to say, because
I can see that.
the same way with the age gap.
Yep.
They think, oh, they don't know what it's like to be me
Yep.
because they're in a certain point of
Yep.
their fitness journey and I'm so much farther ahead, quote unquote, of them.
Right.
They might not be prepared to listen to me. They would rather listen to someone who's been in their shoes. And I made several mistakes earlier on in my professional career.
What do you look back on? What do you look back on like, wow, I was really green.
The first couple of years, I look back on that and I'm like, yeah, there was a lot of mistakes that I made.
What do you do now that you were like, gosh, had I done that with that particular client, I may have held on to them?
Some of the times I would try and treat people with the same mentality that I treated myself as far as coaching and the way I
Which
approached.
was what?
When either it came to exercise or especially nutrition, you know, I would tell like everybody that they needed to track, that it was the only way to do it. And for some people who are just beginning to grasp what it means to be healthy, right? Or to even be aware of what you're having in your own lifestyle, not just sort of cruising.
Right.
That something like that may be intimidating. And
Of
I
course it
forgot
is.
because I was in that same position as well.
Right.
And I didn't do it, right?
And you didn't do it.
Right. And I came to it eventually myself, right, in my own time. And
But I think the key thing you said is you didn't do it even though you knew it was a good thing.
right.
So when your clients were not doing it, did you think they just weren't trying hard enough, or what? Like,
Yeah.
What,
And I also
a
thought
little
that
arrogant.
they weren't as invested
That's what
as
I
they
mean,
should
yeah.
be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Which was a mistake.
Yeah, big mistake.
It may have been true, which is also a big reason why we're doing this.
Right.
Is I want to make sure that people are aware of what they're getting themselves into,
Right.
so that they don't necessarily not waste their time, but not waste their resources if they're not in the headspace at that point.
And see, my perspective on this is that the headspace is all part of the time that it takes to make these changes. You're never going to be 100% excited about creating these new habits.
That's right.
It's a lot. And I think trainers, you know, like you gave me so much leash all the time with, you know, the excuses I would make and the things that I would say. And you never looked at me differently or criticized me. You just listened.
Mm-hmm.
And you understood, like, I'm working through getting myself up to the confidence level that I can even do even one piece of this whole process.
Well, I had a few years already
Yeah.
in
Yeah,
to
by
get
the
to
time I
that
met you.
point.
Yeah.
Right. So things seem to have aligned well when we
Right.
first met.
And you often said that to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I needed that time to build up to get to the point where I could be a little more supportive.
A lot more supportive.
And kind of back off my expectations
Yes.
from what I expected from my clients.
Yes.
Which is not like I'm, you know, not wanting them to achieve everything I want them to.
But you learn to meet people where they are.
That's right.
Because I always would ask you, what are my goals this month? And you would say, well, this is what I have set out for you. We're going to go along and see how it goes. We might be in this plan this month and into next month. Mm-hmm. We'll just see how it goes.
That's right.
But you just kind of said, well, this is my plan, but it doesn't mean that this is the way it's going to go. We'll see how it goes.
That's right.
Which made me feel really good that first there was a plan, mm-hmm. and that I could gauge how I felt if I was doing well against it, or I needed to push myself harder even. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I appreciated that.
Yeah, and it helped a lot that when we met, you were in phase 1.
I was so in phase 1.
Which is contemplation.
Contemplation.
Contemplation is about acknowledging there is a problem, mm-hmm. but you're not yet ready or sure of wanting to change. Or, more importantly, you're lacking the confidence to make that change.
Yeah, so here's what the contemplation stage looks like. And see if anything here resonates with you. In contemplation, you're teeter-tottering. Like you're just kind of on the edge of, wow, I know it's time. I feel like this. I look like this. I want to do something. Another part of contemplation is you're weighing the pros and cons of modifying your behavior. I mean, modifications, you realize, okay, I need to change this. I need to change that. It feel a little bit overwhelming. And then another big part of when you can say, wow, I'm in this contemplation phase, is you're thinking about the negative aspects of your bad habits and the positives associated with changing them. But also, you may be doubting if the long-term benefits associated with change will outweigh the short-term cost. So if any of that sounds like you, congratulations. Like you're in phase 1. You're in phase 1 of habit change, which is contemplation.
And I think that outweighing the short-term costs,
which can be many things, not just cost
financial.
financially.
No, yeah.
It's many things. What are some of the short-term costs that you see people struggle with?
Time.
Yeah, it's a big one.
And also obviously nutrition.
Yeah, it's a big one.
Yeah, I think when they're in this phase, mm-hmm. There's a problem.
Yeah,
or like something is not working.
It at this point.
There's a really good analogy that I've recently started using with clients that I think helps put a bit more into perspective what they're trying to actually do.
Okay.
So imagine you have a job, and that job currently pays you $20 an hour. Mm-hmm. Right? And you work there for several years. Things are great, whatever. But, things change. You may want to get a nicer car or move to a nicer place or inflation, whatever. So now you want to be paid $50 an hour.
Okay.
So if you want to be paid that much more money, are you going to continue being in the same job?
Probably not.
No.
You're probably going to need to make some changes and do some things.
That's right. You're going to update your resume. You're going
to get some new skill sets.
Take some classes or what have you.
Right.
And then you're going to go out to other places, either ask your boss to increase your pay.
Yeah.
Or be like, okay, I'm going to go look for other places that will pay me more.
Okay.
Right? You will do things to get that change.
Yes.
Right? It's the same thing with habit change, lifestyle change. If you are, let's just say 50 pounds overweight and you want to be 30 pounds overweight, mm-hmm. or you want to lose all 50 pounds overweight, mm-hmm. right? Or in the inverse, if you want to gain 20 pounds of muscle or whatever, mm-hmm. are you going to continue to go in the direction you've been going with that want in mind and expect that thing to happen?
No.
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 You're going to make changes to make that happen.
Right. And therein comes the fear.
Right.
Yeah, you can want it all you want, but how do I get there?
That's right.
Wow. There's always like a big gray bubble. How do I get there?
So when it comes to weighing out the short-term costs, mm-hmm. is it worth making a few little adjustments?
And they are little adjustments every day.
To set up to getting you to the point to get that $50 an hour paycheck.
Yeah. That's a personal decision.
And there is no right or wrong answer.
No, it's personal. Right.
If you're not in a position to want to update that resume and to go out and talk to your boss or get a new job, then you are not in contemplation right now.
Right.
And that is fine.
Right.
The big thing and the problem I see is when people come to the gym and they get a trainer and they just think, okay, I'm just going to go work out twice a week for an hour or sometimes even 30 minutes.
Cooper, that is real.
And then, and that's it. But they won't do anything else outside of the gym, right? Which is the thing is that, like, yes, we are here to help. Mm-hmm. Yes, we have skill sets and knowledge to help people. Yeah. But if they won't adopt the change outside, it's not going to happen. So if you're not willing to take that short-term cost of, walking a little bit more or drinking a little bit more water or not eating whatever's in front of you.
And that's something that I distinctly remember you said to me. You were like, Karen, meeting me twice a week for 2 hours a week is not going to get you where you want to go. And you said it to me in the kindest way and the most just direct. And I realized I had to do so much more. In the very beginning, I was kind of that person that felt like I'll go there twice a week and everything will just change and start. I was that person. Literally, I'm being honest here.
Yeah.
A year and a half now down the line, with all the habit changes I've made, like little drips of water in a bucket over the past 19 months, those were all the things that needed to kick in. Then you were like the cherry on top, not vice versa.
So KK, tell me what it was like for you when you first walked in to see me in your contemplation phase.
Well, contemplation started before I walked in to see you because, of course, I had acknowledged that there was a problem.
Okay.
But personally, with me, I started asking myself, if not now, when? I mean, that was huge. When I met you, I was 61. I'll be 63 in about 15 days. But it was just desperately wanting to change. I mean, for God's sake, I thought to myself, girl, you've only got so much runway left. And that was literally the visual. And it sounds a little morbid, but that's just truth.
I mean, it's the same thing what I mentioned earlier about the distance between our ages. You've got this amount of runway left. I've got that amount of runway left.
And what are you going to choose to do with it?
How am I going to set myself up to be in the best position when I have your much runway left than mine?
And it's a brilliant spot to just be acknowledging and to even have the wherewithal to think about. Because I certainly didn't have that.
With what you know now, like how much, it's a heavy word, but regret, or how much would you have changed when you were my age living in Brooklyn compared to what you were doing now?
You know what? Just in my 30s and 40s in general, I have belonged to several gyms. I had taken many different kinds of exercise classes.
Well, there you go.
It wasn't a lifestyle. It wasn't a lifestyle. I wish I would have just kind of understood, like, there's no end date to these things. It was just something I should just try to adapt as what I do and who I was. That realization did not kick in until the last 5 years. So I always was trying to do something, but just kind of out of fun or something to do, not realizing like I should try to adapt this into just my being. That's the biggest regret, is not having that kind of information that I should be working to make this part of my life. I just never thought about it that way.
Little thought experiment. What if you had, like,
I wouldn't be talking to you. I wouldn't know you. We wouldn't be here. Period.
Yeah.
I mean, I would be already this 60-year-old person that I see, that I admire and stare at when I'm traveling, when I'm in an airport, when I'm at the Y. Those people that I stare at like, God, that's who I want to be. I would already be there.
I see that too as well. When I see older people and they're super fit, I'm like, man, I hope I look like that still when I'm like that.
Right. But you now understand, like, you have the tools.
Right.
I had no clue.
So could it be that being healthy, active, could it be more of trying to age better than it is about trying to stay young?
It's trying to age, staying as healthy as you want to stay. I could care less about trying to be young. It's just that trying to age well.
Right, because we're going to get older anyway.
Yeah, I mean, why not get older and feel good? because natural things will happen to you that don't feel so good. And if you can combat them by just the way you're living, and the way you're moving and the way you're eating, why would you not do that?
So this is more about being fit and healthy at any age.
It really is. Like, you know, you feel good when you're young and you don't even think about it. One day you wake up and all of a sudden it's all you can think about. Literally, you're obsessed every day with when you get in your car and you get out to work and you pick what you're having for breakfast and you pick what you're having for lunch, and people want to do a happy hour and you're obsessed about how can I have a normal life but do it where I'm not always feeling like I'm letting myself down or feeling like I'm riding the struggle bus trying to figure this out. So it takes away from the experiences of just life. It's such an energy suck, and people my age will know exactly what I'm talking about. It never leaves your mind. And if you're in pain, for us, it's arthritis problems, it's sciatica problems, it's menopause. If that's already on top of it, it really just brings you down.
Getting a head start at my age will help us prepare to deal with those inevitable things a little bit
those inevitable
better.
Things. You guys actually have all this information out here in the world of what's coming. It's coming. It's nature. It's how we're built. We're humans. Nobody's an exception. We're not bionic people. Yeah, these things are going to come. But if you're in a position already where you have such good habits, you lessen them, or some of them you actually will eliminate. It is that simple. And I get it now. When we talk about how I got into contemplation, I just knew it was time to move into, I'm going to call it a new chapter. I knew that whatever I had been doing in my 40s and 50s, I absolutely could not be doing in my 60s, just because my body was changing and I was just getting all kinds of signs of things that were just not going great. I said to myself, yeah, something needs to get fixed. You've just got to do something now. And that was kind of like a period at the end of that thought. And Cooper, really, I was flat out mad because so much of what started to happen and things like, you know, osteoarthritis, which a lot of people will start to feel in their 60s, sciatic pain, which literally you can start anytime, but really in your 50s and 60s, if you've had a sedentary job where you're at a desk all the time and you're at a computer, those things are going to seriously flare up for real after years and years of that kind of lifestyle. So I just kind of got mad at myself, like, this is so miserable, and I'm 61. Like, 20 years from now, what the hell am I going to feel like? I could barely get up off of the sofa. It scared me, and it also made me mad because I was kind of like, I never even thought that I would be anything but great and active and able to travel and go and do, and all of a sudden all that stuff became questionable. My contemplation kind of came from a little bit of age rage, which is what I like to call it, because I was mad. So that kind of froze me.
It's interesting also that you say it age rage when you're at your age, as opposed to a lot of people that are my age. It's more like age depression, age concession, age like, all right,
about what?
I'm old now.
Just getting past or out of your 20s?
Being freaking 30. Like, I have like so many like friends or people I hear all the time who are like, you know, I can't get up off the couch anymore, or like, oh, I can't do that anymore. I'm like, dude, you're freaking 30.
We're all the same.
So it's interesting how like from a millennial perspective, it seems that once you hit a certain point, that's it.
You guys aren't even just getting started.
I know, but this is what I'm talking about, is like, from our perspective, we have 60, 50 years ahead of us. That feels like a really long time. Whereas when I was 18 and I looked at 25, I was like, oh my God, that's so far away. That was like 7 years. And yet now, you know, that 7 years feels like, it, for me, looks like another 30 years. So it's interesting how the perception of time lengthens, right, as you get older, right? What you consider to be a long time or a short time changes depending on where you are.
Listen, 12 months is nothing. At this point in my life, you blink.
I agree.
You blink and it's 12 months.
Gone. Right. But
it's nothing.
When you were a teenager, oh my God,
it was like
a month took freaking forever.
Like Christmas took forever.
Right. So speaking about, age rage and aging well, right? And preparing how to, like, I think a lot of people my age forget that we have a lot of time. And if you've already given up now, if you've like already given up on like your health.
That shocks me that you're saying people make statements like that in their 30s. I didn't even think about age in my 30s. I was just living.
Oh yeah, we're all like, oh, we're old now. Like, oh, we don't go out anymore or whatever. Like,
Jesus.
We still can.
Yeah.
Right? But we have other things that occupy us than just going out to a bar.
I get it. You guys have a lot more things, and it's all in the house. You can entertain yourself like during COVID.
Right.
My God, between laptops, games, phones, streaming, you never have to leave your house.
Board games.
Like, seriously.
Speaking
you guys
as a
have
nerd.
a whole lot more that you can do in a house than we ever did.
Right.
I was going to the clubs into my 40s.
Right. Yeah.
That's where you met people. We didn't have online dating and all the things.
That's right.
That's how you had to meet somebody. You had to actually go face to face.
On devil's advocate, I also feel like our free time is less. And it's more valuable.
I agree with you that your free time is probably less just because of the world.
Because we spend a lot more time working, especially people who work from home. I guess I'll walk it back and not necessarily say it as like a, giving up mindset, but as I don't know if I have the mental energy or the mental bandwidth to focus on anything that's not going to necessarily keep me alive and healthy. But doing stuff like this, like exercise, is going to make you feel better.
But also the sense of urgency is different because you feel fine.
Right.
You feel fine.
We don't have any arthritis yet. We don't have any...
And you're not gaining weight every time you look at something.
Right.
Like, you're really fine. That's the misconception there. Like, we say youth is wasted on the young. Because had we known what we know now back then, my God.
That's right. So really, this is more of a warning and caution. Again,
it's very much a warning and caution that, y'all, the information now is prevalent. It's everywhere. It's everywhere of some basic little habits you can start to really embrace. And we're not talking about anything radical. These are small things that make such a world of difference as you get into the next 10, 20, 30 years.
I don't expect everyone to want to do bodybuilding like me. Like, that's fine. I don't expect everyone to want to be a marathoner. That's fine.
Right.
And I think that's what a lot of younger, 30s to 40s people think, is that, if I'm not like going to the Olympics, what's the point? But that's not
that's interesting.
Yeah. They think if they're not 1,000,000,000,000% in, what's the point in doing it? Right? When, like you said, it's little tiny things.
It's the small
that help build up. And going for a walk, drinking more water.
The simplest things.
Watching.
Done consistently.
Right.
And all this is just time. Like, I always joke now with my friends, there's no end date on these good habits. There's no end date. Just make it who you are. Because listen, y'all, contemplation, it really is no joke. If you know that you're in this phase, you've already realized pretty quickly that getting your stuff together requires a level of honesty that you probably couldn't even have imagined. How honest you have to get with yourself.
And the more honest you are,
acknowledge it.
Yeah, the sooner and the more honest you are sooner, the better.
Because I had to get real honest about the negative things that I was experiencing, my mobility, energy, weight, and my sleep. Also, a big part of contemplation for me was acknowledging how much crap I actually ate and how much I drank when I was out socially and the complete lack of physical activity that I had. I mean, I had to really accept that I wasn't doing anything to feel so bad about myself. I was feeling bad because I should have felt bad. I felt bad, but there was no piece of my life that I had any focus on to help that be better, which is kind of sick that you're doing it to I was doing it to myself, but that's just the way it was. So long story short, I had a lot of stuff to face.
Well, and that's interesting too, is that often it is just self-inflicted too. I mean, sometimes people can body shame you, whether it's like a relative or a friend, right?
When I've
Can
had
make
that
you
happen,
feel bad about
I've had it happen when I was in your age group, particularly that time frame when everybody's looking at you like, when are you going to get married? When are you going to have a baby? I'll never forget this. One time I went to a restaurant and with my family we frequented, and we knew the restaurant owner, and I was sitting on a bar stool, and I had never had a thought about my weight. My weight was never a problem. And he walked up to me and he was like, "Hey, see, you haven't been missing any meals." And that was just stuff that men said back then. And just kindly walked away.
Damn.
And I had never thought about my weight. Never had to. And then that was the time I was in my late 30s, headed towards 40. That's when stuff was changing. I really wasn't aware of it. But he noticed how different I looked. And, people, friends, family, people make comments like that. And just kind of drop those bombs. And I come from a family of 5 girls. We were constantly compared to one another at family gatherings. Constantly. Whose hips got big? Who's this and that? It was constant. But we all were fine. We weren't overweight. But it was just like, all that stuff comes into play.
And there's a really valuable thing I learned when I first became certified is the concept of health at any weight. And that, everyone has different genetics. Some people like me are just naturally going to be a little more on the lighter side just because of our genetics, right? Other people are going to just naturally carry more because of their genetics. And there's not...
Exactly.
We can do what we can to adjust and change that, right? But like our default setting, I guess you could say.
Yes, your baseline.
Your baseline.
Yeah.
But just because you're one spectrum or the other does not necessarily mean that you're unhealthy. We have a big societal expectation of what, the attractiveness is supposed to look like, which I think, especially my generation and the generation after, we're trying to get beyond that and try and be a little more inclusive.
You guys are the first generation that talk about it.
Yeah.
That really talk about that really dig in and talk about that. My generation, it was acceptable for men to walk up and say things like that.
Right.
Oh, she has childbearing hips. Or, oh, you haven't missed a meal. That was just kind of like, not that it was okay, but it wasn't anything any woman ever sat and discussed all the things that were said to her negatively in the world or in her family.
Right.
Nobody ever talked about that stuff. But I have a perfect quote. Because
Okay.
we're going to share some quotes with y'all.
Go for it.
Genetics loads the gun. Your habits pull the trigger. So to your point, we are what we are. We're born with what we're born with. The genetics just loaded the gun. What we do with that is what pulls the trigger. And it pulls it either so that we're better, or if we pull the trigger because, I'm African American and we come with a lot of kind of medical things that we almost expect are because we're just African American, and it's really not. It's like, our genetics loaded that gun, but everything that we're doing is what keeps pulling the trigger to all these chronic things that are happening, for people of brown people. And that's so amazing. Like, you can pull the trigger in a different direction, but that's never anything you're empowered to think about.
Until now.
Or to look for anything like that until now.
Yeah. And it's also, you may see someone who's more overweight or slightly overweight, right?
That's America.
But that doesn't mean that they're not healthy.
Absolutely not. There are people who walk around 100 pounds heavier than me that have fantastic blood pressure and cholesterol.
Right. And then there are people who I know who... are extremely active and yet had open heart surgery.
Yeah.
Even though they've lived their whole life active and they still had to get bypassed.
It's genetics loads the gun.
Yeah. So there's some things you just can't outrun.
Right.
That doesn't mean that if you think that, I'm this way, I'm never going to... Because I am this way.
X. Right.
That doesn't mean you have to.
Absolutely
right?
not.
Take stock in how you perceive yourself. And if you want change, if you're in that contemplation phase, then seek help, right? If you're fine with the way you are and, you don't see much, you don't feel that fire underneath your you're asked to change,
That's fine.
then you're not ready for it yet, or you never will be, or you don't need to.
And the interesting thing about contemplation is it can be a month, a week, a day, or it can be your entire life.
And put aside what society or social media or whatever
do.
expects of you. Compare how you are right now to what your genetic, type is expected to have. Like you may be like a little bit overweight, but is your blood pressure okay? Right? Is your heart okay? Right?
Is your cholesterol?
Is
How
your
are your
cholesterol
numbers?
okay? Right?
Yeah.
If you have good vitals,
Yeah.
internal health,
Yeah.
then
That's nice.
it's not necessarily whatever is on the outside is just the perks, right? Because you can be really fit on the outside, but on the inside, especially mentally as well, like you said, there can be a lot going on that's wrong. So again, going back to health at any age, right? So compare yourself to yourself and not to others.
Please do. Please do. And I'll tell you, when I was in contemplation, I was always searching for things, for that kind of outside motivation, like that kick in the pants to start whatever it was I was going to start. So I was always reading motivational quotes on Pinterest. I was looking for something that kind of jolted me into action. This is months and months before I pulled the trigger on anything, before I walked in and met you, before I accepted all the stuff I was starting to feel. And I said, I know there are words out there that'll put me into action. I was just kind of hoping and praying that I would read something. People have those moments where I saw it or I read it and it was like, that was it. That happened for me when I was in contemplation, and I'm so thankful for it. And I often talk to you about how, I don't know if I've told you this, but I'm going to get this on a tattoo.
Ooh, okay.
I'm going to get this on a tattoo because it is really what shook me to my core. And because I just never wanted to feel like I was letting myself down. And when I read this, I instantly knew, damn it, you can do so much better. And these 8 words, these are the words that kind of rocked my world and made me like not be so afraid to look in the mirror and say, and look at my numbers at the doctor and say, okay, it's really just time. There's no options here. And the words are, what you are not changing, you are choosing. And I sat there and I said, oh my God, I'm choosing this. I'm choosing this pain. I'm choosing this weight. And the reality is, yes, I was choosing it just because I wasn't doing anything to change it. I literally read that and sat back from my computer screen. That's how that hit me. Like, this is the quality that you're choosing? Really, Karen? Really? And that was exactly what went through my head. Like, no, I'm not choosing this. Because thank God there's nothing I had that was, critical. I have chronic things, but they're not critical. And I could make all those things better with habit change. So when I read that, I was like, I've always chosen what I thought was good for myself. And gosh, this stuff has been bothering me now for years, but I'm actually choosing it because I'm not doing a damn thing about it.
And this goes back to my analogy of the job.
Right. I want to make more money. Well, there's some set things that you can do to make more money. You
either change or you're choosing to not get that more money.
There are things you can do to get more money.
Right.
You can choose those things and try to make it happen, or just stay where you are.
Only if you want the more money, then not doing things to get there and complaining about it is the problem. If you're happy with that $20 and you're good with that, there's nothing wrong with that.
No.
I think that's a big thing as well, is that people seem to think that there's something's wrong with them. And that if they're not doing things to make themselves better, quote unquote, then they're failing.
I mean, there's a boomer saying, there's a keeping up with the Joneses. That's a boomer saying. It literally started in our generations where the neighbors, everybody's trying to keep up with each other. But that's kind of, it's just prevalent, I think, in human beings. And it's really prevalent for you guys because everything is in your face because you're on social medias.
Right.
And you're just looking at people your age doing all these things like, should I be doing that too?
Right.
should I look like that?
Right.
It's a lot.
And
You
it's
know?
there's no right or wrong answer, but my main thing, especially with my clients now, is I just want them to be healthy.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I'm looking more
That's an achievement.
for health
Right.
and aesthetics, which is a big coming from me as as someone who wants to get into bodybuilding.
Right.
Aesthetics is the second, because what goes on inside is gonna inform how you age.
It's just true. I mean, I learned this past year how much harder it is after 60 to gain muscle.
Mm-hmm. Especially as a woman.
Who'd have thought?
Yeah.
I was just like, okay, so regardless of internally what's going on with me, just the fact that I'm in the stage I'm in makes it harder for my body to gain muscle.
Right.
And muscle is what takes care of everything.
Right. And it's really funny because I train so many female clients.
Okay.
And I would probably say that they are more rewarding, especially older female clients.
I've seen some of the ladies in the gym with me, and they make me feel so good because they're a little bit older than me, but they're in there killing it.
Because they feel like they have more to lose more to gain.
Yeah.
And they're more motivated to take action than I feel like men are in a certain respects.
Interesting.
Which is good and fun because they get really excited when they hit a new PR or they're like, oh my God, like I finally walked 10,000 steps every day last week.
Yeah.
Or I had more water, or look at this. Like I went to hike with my daughter and I felt great. Like I was thanking all the step ups you made me do because I could do that better. That's really cool.
Okay, so that's all we have for today. Thank you so much for listening to the flagship episode of You Want Me to Do What? With Karen and Cooper.
You can find me, Cooper, on Instagram at @thepen_dragon_fitness.
And you can find me, Karen, otherwise known as KK, at winkwink854.
If you're loving this podcast, we'd be honored if you'd go ahead and like and subscribe if you're watching on YouTube. If at any point in this episode you're related to something we talked about, we'd love to hear from you. So please share your story in the comments on YouTube, or drop a line on our Instagram post for this episode.
We will leave you with this today. This is a quote that just kind of makes you think about this whole contemplation and where you might be. And the quote is, the magic you're looking for might be in the work you're avoiding. So until next time, this is KK.
This is Cooper.
Bye.
Bye.